Alright, Trekkies and Trekkers, time for final episode review of the day, which is The Wire. As he and Julian Bashir are walking along the promenade, Garrick mentions that he had wasted his entire morning waiting for a Gallipodan freighter to arrive. He explained that such is the price of dealing with a species that refuses to acknowledge the concept of time, although he adds that they make magnificent sweaters. Bashir yawns as Garrick talks, having stayed up late the night before reading The Never-Ending Sacrifice, a book that Garrick loaned him. Though Garrick describes it as the finest Cardassian novel ever written, Bashir reluctantly admits he found it dull in parts. As he talks, they reach the Replomat only to find a line long enough that Garrick suggests they will be finished with lunch, only in time for dinner. Bashir suggests Quarks, but Garrick is not in the mood for rousy, crowded, and vulgar, which also excludes the Klingon restaurant. They resume their discussion of the novel while they wait in line, and Bashir notes that the plot involves 7 generations of a family, yet all of the characters spend their lives serving the state. Garrick finds this to be a redeeming quality, as the repetitive epic is the most elegant form of Cardassian literature. When Bashir points out that there is more to life than duty to the state, Garrick calls him a prisoner of Federation dogma and human prejudice. Bashir seems hurt by Garrick's harsh comment, and as he responds, Garrick suffers a severe and sudden migraine. Although Garrick insists he is fine, Bashir points out that his skin is clammy and his pupils have contracted. Garrick claims to be in perfect health and attempts to return to the topic at hand, but he is again interrupted by another bout of pain. Bashir rhetorically observes that Cardassian standards must be lower than his own and begs to lead Garrick to the infirmary, but Garrick refuses to go with him, believing there's nothing wrong that some sleep will not cure. He claims to have lost his appetite and walks off, agitated. Walking through the crowd in the Replomat toward Bashir, Major Kira observes Garrick's sudden departure and asks Bashir what happened, but the doctor is just as confused as she is. In her quarters, Jadzia Dax looks on as Bashir uses his medical tricorder to examine an alien plant of some kind, which looks like a miniature bush with a large cone growing from it. She asks if he can tell what is wrong with the plant. In his expert medical opinion, it is sick. However, when she asks why, he points out that he is a doctor, not a botanist. Unfortunately, Keiko O'Brien is at a hydroponics conference on Rigel 4, and the only Dax host to experiment with gardening was Tobin, who had even less luck with plants than he did with women. All she's able to tell him about the plant is that she picked it up on Ladonia 3. Asking his computer, she discovers that Ladonian soil contains a type of fungus that helps plants retain water. He estimates that there is enough fungus left in the plant's soil to harvest it and produce a new batch, which should cure its sickness, and Dax tells him Keiko would be proud. However, he wishes his humanoid patients were more easy to treat. Dax deceitfully asks if Chief O'Brien has dislocated his shoulder again, but Bashir is referring to Garrick. The doctor relates his lunchtime experience and how Garrick seemed on the verge of a seizure, yet refused to visit the infirmary. Dax suggests that Garrick has a phobia associated with doctors, but Bashir believes it has more to do with Cardassian pride. While Bashir can understand Garrick's desire to help keep his past a mystery, he is at a loss for why Garrick would be secret about his medical condition. Dax observes that Bashir is taking the matter too personally, which he concedes may be true, but he points out that he and Garrick have eaten lunch together once a week for over a year, which should garner a little trust in his view. However, Dax points out that Bashir and Garrick are not actual friends, so Garrick has no reason to trust him. It is obvious Bashir has feelings to the contrary, as he agrees with her and claims he does not trust Garrick either. He abruptly leaves Dax's quarters upon getting a sample of the plant. Later that evening, Bashir enters the mostly vacant promenade and notices Garrick talking to Quark and holds a datapad. So I take it we understand each other? Garrick is saying to Quark. The Ferengi asks if he has ever let Garrick down once in Garrick's 2 years aboard Deep Space Nine. As Garrick points out, they have never done business until now, which Quark says is why their deal is so important to him. He wants their business relationship to start on the right foot. Garrick reassures Quark that he will procure Garrick's merchandise, which Garrick warns he must have soon. Garrick believes in Quark has a satisfied grin on his face until Bashir makes his presence known, claiming he cannot help but overhear the conversation. Quark claims Garrick ordered a reasonably priced sizing scanner from America too, nothing more. Bashir asks why Garrick seemed upset, but Quark claims not to have noticed, offering him some Syrian brandy to go over a late-night session in Hollow Suite. Seeing he will not learn anything from Quark, Bashir politely declines and leaves. As Bashir administers hyperspray to Commander Benjamin Sisko in the infirmary, he jokingly tells the commander not to yell at any more admirals. "I wasn't yelling, I was just expressing my feelings." Loudly, Sisko replies with a grin as he exits. He and O'Brien acknowledge each other as the chief passes by on his way in. Bashir asks O'Brien to help him find some old Cardassian medical files. O'Brien is not surprised Bashir has had trouble in accessing them, as the Cardassians did a general system sweep before they withdrew from Bajor. Medical files would have been deleted along with everything else, but as he accesses Bashir's computer, O'Brien estimates he can retrieve the bulk of the data within 2 to 3 weeks. Bashir seems dismayed, but Quark interrupts on the emergency communications channel to announce that he needs a doctor to come to his bar immediately. Bashir and O'Brien exchange looks, unsure what to make of the request as Bashir grabs the medikit and leaves. In Quark's, Bashir finds the heavily intoxicated Garrick sitting at the bar with several empty bottles of Kanar in front of him, opening another despite Quark's insistence that he has had enough. Garrick is pleasantly surprised to see Bashir. He promises to reschedule their lunch date and asks Bashir to join him. Bashir accepts, reaching for the bottle, and suggests that they drink the Kanar somewhere private. Garrick agrees and suggests his quarters. As they get up to leave, Bashir mentions that he must make a stop in the infirmary. Despite being intoxicated, Garrick still has his wits about him. The Cardassian stops and laughs at Bashir's attempt to trick him, demanding the bottle back. Bashir slips the bottle to Quark behind his back, and the two of them debate the matter for a few seconds before Garrick appears to suffer a seizure, grabbing Bashir's arm as he collapses in pain. Bashir contacts Ops to get an emergency transport to the infirmary, and the two of them beam out of the bar. Garrick lies unconscious in the infirmary with the monitoring device attached to his forehead, and the Bajor nurse Jabara attends to him as Odo and Bashir stand next to a screen on the wall. The screen shows a 3-dimensional image of Garrick's brain with a purple spot indicating a foreign object. Odo asks if it is an implant of some kind, but Bashir was hoping Odo could tell him since Odo worked for the Cardassians during the occupation of Bajor. However, Odo points out somewhat sarcastically that while he may know the Cardassians well, he has never looked inside their skulls. He asks if the implant is the cause of Garrick's condition, which Bashir believes is possible, as the implant is connected to Garrick's entire central nervous system. It may be a punishment device from the Cardassian government, but based on the scars surrounding the implant, Bashir estimates it has been in Garrick's brain for years, whereas the Cardassian has only been in pain for just a few days. Neither of them knows for sure what the implant is, but Bashir mentions that Quark may know something, piquing Odo's interest immediately. When he hears of Bashir's encounter with Quark, Odo remarks, "The direct approach seldom works with people like him." The meeting may help explain why Quark has sent several coded subspace messages. Odo explains that he routinely monitors Quark's communications, which, while not entirely legal, is in the station's best interests. The constable tells Bashir to meet him in the security office at O200, as that is when Quark makes his clandestine calls. That night, Quark goes to his terminal behind the bar after closing contacts Bohica, an old acquaintance from the time when the Cardassians occupied Bajor. Bohica inquires about a Dabo girl he knew, as he misses her company. In a mischievous tone, Quark replies, "I'm sure she misses you too." They share a laugh before getting down to business. Quark enticingly asks Bohica if he would like to earn enough latinum to buy himself a promotion, at which Bohica gives Quark his undivided attention. The Ferengi needs the installation schematics for a piece of Cardassian biotechnology, which Bohica says should be relatively easy to obtain. Bohica asks what it is, but Quark never asks questions of his clients, so he simply transmits a requisition code to Bohica. Meanwhile, Bashir and Odo observe a monitor in Odo's office. Bashir hopes Odo does not have a camera like this in his quarters, to which Odo rhetorically asks, "Should I?" When Bohica puts the code into his computer, a red light flashes and he looks terrified. Calling Quark an idiot, he exclaims that he is ruined and his career over. Quark wonders what happened, and Bohica fiercely informs him that the code was for classified biotechnology. Even if the requisition code itself is classified. He demands to know where Quark got it, but, when Scan looking frightened, thinks better of it and says he does not know. If he is lucky, the Obsidian Order will not trace the signal back to him. Nice talking to you, Bohica. We'll have to do it again sometime. Quark panics. As Quark terminates the transmission, Odo shuts off the camera feed and he and Bashir walk out to the promenade. Odo explains to Bashir that the Obsidian Order is the ever-vigilant eyes and ears of the Cardassian Empire. Common knowledge is that one cannot send down 2 million Cardassia without the Order noting each course. Bashir wonders what happens to people who eat something that is not in agreement with the Order, and Odo notes that people have disappeared for less. The Order's ruthlessness and efficiency are without measure, topping even the Romulan Tal Shiar. Bashir points out that the Order put the device. Bashir supposes that the Order had put the device in Garrick's brain, but Odo is interested in why Garrick wants to get his hands on another one. Garrick may want to find a way to remove the device, but there's no way to know for sure without asking Garrick himself. Bashir thanks Odo for his help and enters the infirmary as Odo resumes his patrol. Upon entering the infirmary, he queries the computer on Garrick's condition. He's surprised to find out from the computer that Garrick is no longer in the infirmary. Checking Garrick's bed, all he finds is Garrick's discarded hospital gown. Bashir then leaves to locate Garrick. Bashir immediately visits Garrick's quarters, but there is no answer, so he uses an emergency medical override to command to open the door. Inside, he finds Garrick administering triptacodurine to himself with a hypospray. Although Garrick seems pleased to see Bashir and observes that he must have missed the door chime, his speech is heavily impaired by the effects of the drug. Bashir finds that Garrick has taken enough of it to anesthetize an Algorian mammoth, but as Garrick barely feels anything, he claims Cardassians must be made of sterner stuff. Fed up with the games, Bashir orders Garrick to come with him to the infirmary, and Garrick assures the doctor that he is beyond help. Cutting to the chase, Bashir tells Garrick that Quark is not coming. A worried look crosses Garrick's face, although he tries to cover it up, as he asks how Bashir knows this information. When Bashir warns him of Bohica, a dismayed Garrick says he should have expected as much. He concedes to himself that it may be for the best, requesting his hypospray back from Bashir. Bashir refuses, warning Garrick that another dose could kill him. Thank you for your concern, Garrick replies politely, but I'd rather have the hypospray. However, Bashir refuses to let his Cardassian friend commit suicide. Garrick demands it back, holding a small container of triptacodurine, but it falls to his knees in pain as the cranial implant acts up again. Now Garrick leans against a chair and allows Bashir to take the container from his hand. He informs Bashir that his cranial nerve cluster should have deteriorated slightly by now. As he scans Garrick's head with a medical tricorder, Bashir adds that the deterioration is not so slight. Nonetheless, Garrick refuses to go to the infirmary because he has no intention of allowing the Bajorans on the station to see him in his present state. Bashir asks about the implant, so Garrick explains that it's not a punishment device, although it has become one in a way. He avoids direct talk with the implant's nature, however, assuring Bashir that it cannot be removed, because if it could, it would be useless. The implant was given to Garrick by Enabron Tain, head of the Obsidian Order, and was said to trigger the production of endorphins in the event that Garrick was tortured, ironically making him immune to pain. However, it was not designed for continuous use. Life aboard DS-9, where the temperature is too cold, the lights are too bright, and the citizens loathe him, has been torture for Garrick since he arrived. Not wanting to deal with the pain anymore, he created a device that allowed him to trigger the implant on demand and used it for a few minutes each day. As time went on, he gradually began using it more and more until he left the implant on permanently. 2 years later, the implant is breaking down, and while Bashir suggests turning it off, Garrick's body has become addicted to the higher endorphin levels. Garrick has essentially given up, a strategy which Bashir sees as letting them, the Central Command, Obsidian Order, or whoever exiled Garrick to DS-9, win. The Cardassian calls Bashir an annoying pest, but he's used to hearing the insult from Chief O'Brien and claims he never listens to O'Brien either. In light of Bashir's undaunted optimism, Garrick confronts the doctor with the fact that he deserves his punishment. Bashir insists no one deserves such treatment, and all that matters is that Garrick is his patient and he is Garrick's doctor. Wrong again, Garrick corrects him. You need to know who you are trying to save. At the time of the Cardassian withdrawal from Bajor, Garrick tells Bashir, he was a gull in the Cardassian mechanized infantry. When a group of Bajorans escaped from his custody, his aide Aleem tracked them down and followed them aboard a Cardassian shuttle headed for Terek Nor. However, the captain of the shuttle claimed to be under strict orders from Gul Dukat to depart immediately, and refused to let Aleem search the shuttle. Garrick had the shuttle destroyed, killing the escapees, Aleem, and 97 other Cardassians, one of whom was the daughter of a prominent official. Garrick was subsequently stripped of his rank and exiled from Cardassia. As he finishes the story, Garrick hangs his head in shame, having finally revealed the truth to Bashir, or so it seems. Bashir, now more compassionate than before, reaffirms that he is not concerned about what Garrick has done in the past, and that he won't leave Garrick to die. Whatever the side effects of turning the implant off may be, he promises to help Garrick through them, but he needs to know where the triggering device is. Garrick points him to a drawer, and he takes it out and examines it. Garrick lies unconscious on his bed with a monitor device on his forehead. Bashir and a nurse are at Garrick's bedside, and Bashir informs him that he will be with Garrick for at least the next 26 hours if he needs him. He leaves, and Bashir tells the computer to monitor Garrick's implant for any signs of activation. Shortly thereafter, the door chime rings. Odo enters, hoping to ask Garrick a few questions. However, Garrick has been unconscious since Bashir turned the implant off, so he and Odo talk quietly in the corner outside Garrick's quarters. There, Odo informs him that he has had 4 unsolved homicides, which he is certain are linked to the Obsidian Order. However, Bashir explains that Garrick's body has undergone a severe shock, and he is unsure of when or if Garrick will recover. Odo is stuck to Garrick immediately when he learns that the Cardassian might not recover, but Bashir forbids anyone except emergency personnel from entering Garrick's quarters for the time being. That night, Bashir remains at Garrick's quarters, monitoring his progress and worrying about him, and eventually falls asleep in a chair near Garrick's bed. Garrick awakens in the middle of the night and sits on the side of his bed, sobbing out of both pain and sorrow when Bashir, too, awakens. The doctor approaches Garrick comfortingly, but Garrick wants to be left alone. The more Bashir attempts to comfort Garrick, the more agitated Garrick becomes, calling his life pathetic and DS9 a prison. He grabs a nearby vase of flowers and smashes it on the floor as he speaks. Though Bashir attributes this behavior to the side effects of the implant's deactivation, Garrick claims he is more clear-headed than he has been in the last 2 years. Referring to his life aboard DS9 as a waste, he turns over a table in frustration. He claims he was once a protege of the head of the Obsidian Order, an Abrantane, a man more powerful than even the Central Command, until he, Garrick, was exiled. Bashir refers to the incident of the shuttle, but Garrick reveals that his disgrace is even worse than he previously claimed. In this version of the story, on the eve of the Cardassian withdrawal of Bajor, Garrick and Aleem were interrogating a group of 5 Bajoran children, none of them older than 14. The air was chilly and Garrick's stomach was growling, and still the entire exercise seemed suddenly meaningless. All I wanted was a hot bath and a good meal. Garrick gave the children whatever latinum he had and released them. Aleem couldn't believe his eyes. He looked at me as if I were insane. Bashir sees his act as honorable, but Garrick claims he was a fool and should have turned the children over to the troops for execution. In one swift move, he was exiled to the station with nothing to look forward to but having lunch with Bashir. As Garrick describes life on the station with contempt and claims he hates it, and hates Bashir. Bashir patiently tries to get Garrick to lie down, but the Cardassian lunges at him. A brief struggle ensues where Garrick suffers another seizure and goes into shock. Once again in the infirmary, Bashir tells Jabbar to administer more hyperzine to Garrick, but Garrick's body does not respond. They use cardiostimulation to stabilize Garrick's heartbeat, but the Cardassian's lymphatic system still reads critical. A perplexed Bashir cannot understand why toxins continue to accumulate despite the implant being shut down, so he uses the computer to analyze previous biochemical samples. A comparative view of samples over the past 39 hours show a pattern progression of Garrick's leukocytes, indicating that the molecular structure itself has been altered. While it may be possible to synthesize Cardassian leukocytes, doing so would take weeks. Jabbar suggests that they turn the implant back on, as it could keep Garrick alive for another week or two. However, Garrick awakens and forbids it. Garrick tells Bashir that he never wants the implant turned on again, and when Bashir empathizes, he isn't sure what else he can do. On hearing this, Garrick gratefully assures the doctor he has already done more than the Cardassian deserves. Garrick announces that he wants to tell Bashir the truth, something Bashir has given up on finding. "Oh, don't give up on me now, Doctor. Patience has its rewards," Garrick replies softly. The truth is that Aleem was not Garrick's aide, but his friend, closer to him than a brother. The two of them were powerful members of the Obsidian Order, referred to by many as the Sons of Tain, and even feared by the Gauls. When scandal erupted over the release of several Bajoran prisoners, there were rumors of who could be implicated, and as Tain had retired to the Arwath colony by then, he was unable to protect Garrick. Panicking, Garrick altered records and planted files in an attempt to frame Aleem. However, only then he discovered that Aleem had beat him to the punch. When Garrick was subsequently exiled, he admits he deserved it, not for the reasons the government claimed, but for betraying his best friend. He confides in the doctor that he needs to know someone forgives him, which Bashir does, acknowledging for both of them that Garrick is a good man despite past wrongdoings. Finally at ease, Garrick falls asleep peacefully. Bashir informs Jabbar that he plans to leave and will return within 52 hours, intending to find the man responsible for this. There was a somber feeling as Bashir leaves Deep Space Nine in a runabout and travels to the colony Garrick mentioned. Bashir beams down to the surface, in an occupied room of a Cardassian-style dwelling. After glancing around to make sure that he is alone, he wanders over to a nearby computer console. Whatever is displayed on the console's monitor intrigues him, but as he reaches toward it, a Cardassian man emerges from a doorway behind him. "Dr. Bashir," the man interrupts in a friendly tone. "Welcome. Please, make yourself at home." Bashir is speechless, unsure of what to say. The Cardassian observes that the doctor must have something to say to him after coming all this way, at which point Bashir identifies him as an aberrant Tain. Tain returns the favor, demonstrating his knowledge by identifying his guest as Dr. Julian Zobatoi Bashir. Although he explains that he informed the military that Bashir would be coming, Tain is nonetheless impressed by Bashir's audacity in making the journey. Tain looks over to the replicator and asks Bashir if he liked anything, suggesting Tarkalian tea. The idea appeals to Bashir, who mentions that he always drinks Tarkalian tea before he suddenly realizes how suspicious it is for Tain to know such a thing. A good host always knows the needs of his guests. Tain explains as he orders Bashir's tea. Extra sweet, just the way Bashir likes it, and a glass of Kanar for himself. He hands Bashir the tea and asks if Garrick's condition has improved at all. However, Bashir is focused not on Garrick but on Tain's incredible wealth of knowledge, observing that Bohica had reason to fear the Obsidian Order. Tain affirms that, indeed, everyone has reason to fear the Order. Tain claims that he likes to stay informed on current events despite his retirement, noting with amusement that Bashir could probably tell him many things he would be interested to know. Sarcastically, Bashir offers his opinion on the latest Nelamite alloy tennis racket, but Tain respectfully declines. Tain then steers the conversation back to Garrick's condition. Bashir confirms that Garrick is dying, and that he is trying to save Garrick. Tain finds it strange that Bashir is trying to save Garrick's life, since he thought Bashir was Garrick's friend. Given the early exchanges Bashir had with both Dax and Garrick, he thinks the matter over for a second before replying, "I suppose I am." In that case, Tain believes Bashir should let Garrick die, knowing that, for Garrick, a life in exile is no life at all. Bashir reaffirms that his job is to keep Garrick alive. He says that Garrick's leukocytes have an aberration, and he is not able to synthesize them due to his limited knowledge of Cardassian biochemistry. When the Cardassian feigns surprise at Bashir's belief in his ability to have access to such information, Bashir points out that information is Tain's business. When Bashir confronts him with the fact that he ordered Garrick to put the implant in his brain, Tain finally explains that what made Garrick special was that he never had to order Garrick to do anything. Tain sarcastically weighs the options and says he will have the information transferred to Bashir's Bashir's ship. When Bashir thanks him, Tane deflects it, remarking that Garrick doesn't deserve a quick death. Instead, he wants Garrick to have a long, miserable life growing old in a station with people who hate him, and knowing that he can never again return home. When Bashir sarcastically observes the lovely sentiment behind Tane's statement, the Cardassian assures him it is from the heart, and sends him on his way. Before leaving, Bashir asks Tane about what happened to Garrick's friend Aleem. Laughing, Tane explains that Aleem is Garrick's first name, and that Garrick hasn't changed a bit. Tane remarks that never telling the truth, one lie would suffice, is a hallmark of Garrick's talent for obfuscation. Despite the hatred Tane has expressed, he asks Bashir to tell Garrick he misses him. When Bashir orders the runabout to beam him up, he pauses momentarily before he gives the energized command. Tane's words weighing heavily on his mind as he realizes none of Garrick's stories were true. Back aboard Deep Space Nine, Bashir sits alone, deep in thought at his and Garrick's table in the Replomat. He is stirred from his trance, surprised when Garrick walks up and asks to join him. Bashir seems annoyed, albeit in a concerned manner, that Garrick is not in bed. Bed is out of the question, as Garrick cannot stand being in the infirmary and feels fine anyway. Before his companion can respond, Garrick asks how Bashir's Indian spice pudding tastes. Bashir finds it incredible that Garrick can simply go on with life and pretend the last 10 days never happened. But as Garrick is satisfied with the way things turned out, he sees no point in dwelling on such a difficult time for both of them. Perhaps because he agrees, perhaps because he doesn't want to argue, Bashir simply sips his beverage. Garrick seems surprised and informs Bashir that Constable Odo was under the impression he was once a member of the Obsidian Order. Of course, he assured the Constable this was untrue. Odo told Garrick he plans to keep a close eye on him from now on, which seems fine with Garrick as he claims he has nothing to hide. Taking out Data Rod, he hands Bashir Meditations on a Crimson Shadow, a Cardassian novel by Prologue. The Doctor is enthusiastic by the notion of more Cardassian literature, but Garrick believes this novel is more to Bashir's liking. He explains it is about a futuristic war between Cardassia and the Klingon Empire. Bashir dryly asks who wins, to which Garrick grins in response. Who do you think? Never mind, don't tell me. I don't want to spoil the ending, Bashir says sarcastically. As Garrick laughs, Bashir obviously has something more serious on his mind. He wonders which of the stories about Garrick's past are true and which are not. Garrick reassures him they are all true, especially the lies. That's kind of shadowy there. So anyway, let's take a look at the background information with this episode, beginning with story and script. Robert Hewitt Wolf's original idea for this episode was to have shown that Kira had been addicted to battle stimulants ever since her days in the Bajoran Resistance. However, that idea was rejected because it would be too difficult to do subsequent episodes with Kira without referencing the addiction. It was felt that it could tarnish her character too much. At first, Ira Steven Behr took inspiration from a particular movie during the writing of Garrick in this episode. Quote, When I was writing the story, stated Robert Hewitt Wolf, the movie Schindler's List had just come out, and Ira was saying, maybe he was Schindler, maybe he was the guy who let the prisoners go. Then it was, maybe he wasn't, maybe he was a butcher of Budapest. So we just kept telling all these lies, and I think the truth lies somewhere in there. Maybe he did let people go, maybe he did shoot down the ship. Who knows? During the writing of this episode, the Obsidian Order was initially going to be the Grey Order until the producers learned that Babylon 5 planned to introduce a group called the Grey Council and felt the names were too similar. A line in the script but not contained in the finished episode would have revealed that Benjamin Sisko served at the Federation Embassy on Romulus early in his career, where he befriended a Romulan member of the kitchen staff named Stolpan. It was further revealed that Stolpan was arrested by the Tal Shiar for political improprieties. In response, Sisko was prepared to go to the Tal Shiar headquarters and convince them to set him free. However, Sisko was eventually persuaded by Curzon Dax not to go. Interesting. David Livingston commented, quote, It's a bottle show. It's basically Andy Robinson in a room, but it's very compelling because it's one man intervening. Now on to cast and characters. Andrew Robinson has said of this episode, quote, "I wish there was more writing like that for television. I think we'd have a much healthier industry." Excuse me. Robinson further remarked, quote, "When you get moments like in The Wire, where he is in great emotional distress, even at those moments you don't know if what he's saying is the truth or not. But you know that emotionally he is telling the truth." Alexander Siddig considered The Wire to be an important episode for Bashir and his relationship with Garrick. Siddig commented, quote, "There was a prototypical character exploration for that was a prototypical character exploration episode for Andy and me. We spent so much time together, got to know each other, realized we liked working with each other. It's actually another episode that's close to me. Andy and I worked extremely hard on that one, and it took a great deal out of both of us. We realized at that point that the relationship between Garrick and Bashir was never to look back. The show itself was very real and very relevant." Avery Brooks, Nana Visitor, Terry Farrell, and Cole Meany appear in only one scene each in this episode. Brooks and Visitor's appearances are very brief, both actors having only a few lines. As noted above, the scene featuring Cisco meeting with Bashir before Bashir leaves the station to meet Tane was cut for time. Kara Lofton does not appear in the episode. Now finally onto some continuity and trivia. Alexander Siddig compared this episode to Armageddon Game, commenting, quote, "The Wire had the same function for Andy that Armageddon Game had for me." Paul Julian made his first appearance as an unborn Tane in this episode. This was originally intended to be a sole appearance, but much like the situation with Andrew Robinson's Garrick, the fans liked Tane so much and the producers so impressed with Dooley, they decided to bring him back. He later reprised the role in Probable Cause, The Dice Cast, and A Purgatory Shadow. This also marks the first appearance of the Obsidian Order. The producers were so impressed with Kim Friedman's work on this installment that they brought her back to direct several crucial episodes, such as the Season 2 finale of The Jem'Hadar, the Season 3 opener The Surge Part 1, and the conclusion to the Michael Eddington/McKee story arcs Blades of Glory. When Tane first meets Bashir, he calls the Doctor Julian Sabatoy Bashir. This is the first and only mention of Bashir's middle name in the series. Garrick's claims that he and Aline were the sons of Tane hints at the fact that Unborn Tane is his father, which is revealed in Purgatory's Shadow. This is the first time that Cardassia Prime is mentioned, and the first time that the Cardassian homeworld is actually named. The war between the Klingons and the Cardassians in Garrick's novel foreshadows the events of the Way of the Warrior and the Klingon-Cardassian War. This foreshadowing was unintentional and was, in fact, included as a ridiculous premise to the show to show what Garrick thought of Bashir's literary taste, as a plan for the Klingon-Cardassian War was not conceived of until later. The Kanar scene in this episode, both the Quark Sport and Tane's house, appears quite different from its usual syrupy brown look. In this episode, it appears Bloom lacks the thick viscosity of Kanar in other episodes, looking similar to Romulan ale. A script for this episode was sold off on the It's a Wrap sale and auction on eBay. So overall, I think it's a pretty good episode, and I like the fact that it delved a little bit into Garrick's backstory and stuff like that. So, yeah. So, overall, I give the episode The Wire 5 warp cores out of 5. Well, anyway, tune in tomorrow as we take a look at the next episode, Crossover. So, until then, live long and prosper, everybody.